to Newsroom. Chella Smith here, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news here on YouTube, airing on Fridays. I bring you the latest on reforms and economics based on reports put out by the Middle East news media outlets. I do this weekly review and it's based off my interest. Thank you everyone who joins me each week. I appreciate all your continued support through your likes, comments, and shares. Those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome to Newsroom. If you're holding the Iraqi dinar, maybe this channel will be of interest for you. We've had a lot of back and forth with political news releases over the last week, and to be honest, I'm only going to report on final results. Otherwise, we're sticking to economics and reforms because this is where the growth in the Iraqi dinar will come from once presidents are seated. Let's get into the news headlines, but before we get started, my audio is slightly messed up. The good news is it will return to normal next Friday. Before we get started, Baghdad People's Naz News reports the United States has reintroduced waivers related to activities of the Iranian civil nuclear program, which is canceled in 2020 during the era of President Donald Trump, at the time when talks to save the nuclear agreement entered into a critical stage. We have decided to resonate a sanction waiver in order to allow outside participation to ensure non-proliferation, a senior U.S. official said, due to increasing concerns arising from the continued development of Iran's nuclear activities. He added that this discussion should also facilitate the technical discussions that are essential in the last weeks of the talks, referring to negotiations that will resume in the coming days in Vienna between Tehran and other great powers. The waiver itself will be necessary to ensure Iran's rapid compliance with its nuclear obligations in the event of a settlement in Vienna where the negotiations are taking place, he adds. He stresses that even without an agreement in the Austrian capital, these technical decisions will continue to contribute to achieving a non-proliferation goals, with Washington stressing that this is not a concession to Iran, nor it's a sign that we are on the verge of reaching a consensus to save the 2015 agreement that is supposed to prevent Iran from developing an atomic bomb. These exemptions relate to particular to Tehran's research reactor and to the heavy water reactor in Iraq, which has been converted under the eyes of international communities in ways that make it impossible to produce plutonium for military use. Moving along with economics, Alfred News reports the U.S. Energy Information Administration announced past Saturday that Iraq's oil exports increased during the past week, reaching 412,000 barrels per day. The administration said in a report the average U.S. imports of crude oil during the past week from 9 countries amounted to 5,987 million barrels per day, an increase of 921,000 barrels per day compared to the previous week, which amounted to 5,066 million barrels per day. She adds American imported crude oil from Iraq at a rate of 412,000 barrels per day during the past week, up from the previous week in which the average exported amounted to 133,000 barrels per day. Noting most of America's oil revenues during the past week came from Canada, with a rate of 3,953 million barrels per day, followed by Saudi Arabia at a rate of 613,000 barrels per day, followed by Mexico at the rate of 383,000 barrels per day, then Colombia at a rate of 286,000 barrels per day, and Ecuador at the rate of 236,000 barrels per day. According to the administration, the amount of U.S. imports of crude oil from Trinidad and Tobago amounted to an average of 75,000 barrels per day, followed by Nigeria at the rate of 20,000 barrels per day, and that Nigeria came in at a rate of 9,000 barrels per day, while America did not export any quantity from Brazil. And according to the administration, America did not export oil from Russia, Ecuador, Trinidad, and Tobago. Shafak News reported Saturday the leader of the Sadrist movement, Muqtada al-Sadr's, suspended negotiations with the political blocs. The head of the Sadrist parliamentary bloc, Hassan al-Hadhari, Hari said during a press conference inside a parliament building, which was attended by Shafak News Agency, it was by order of His Eminence Al-Sadrs. It was decided to freeze negotiations with the political blocs regarding the formation of the next government until further notice. Adzari added members of the Sadrs bloc said not to attend the parliament session to choose the president of the republic, with the exception of the first deputy speaker of parliament, Hakim al-Zamili. Earth News reports the Ministry of Finance announced that Iraqi's economy has begun to recover as a result of the reform steps of the white papers. And the ministry said in a statement received by Earth News, the Ministry of Finance, Ali Alawi, participated in activities of the Bar of Al-Umlam Forum for Dialogue, which aimed to activate dialogue between the Iraqi elites and fill parts of the void that the arena suffers from its various axes. And one of its requirements is openness in various segments. Iraq is far from partisanism, sectarism, and nationalist trenches. She adds the forum granted Alawi the shield of creativity and excellence as a certificate of appreciation for distinguished efforts he made during the short period that passed since his assumption of the ministerial position, noting that the main goal of such intelligence activities and meaningful dialogue is to produce a movement that helps create a moderate climate for the practice of work, political and economic. She indicated that the forum witnessed the presentation of many of pivotal axis that is excellency the ministry touched on, the most important of which is the policy of changing the exchange rate that guarantees the revival of the Iraqi economy by supporting the productive sector in the private sector and discussing options and ideas related to the current economic reality and ways to move from the current low level productivity and income to a high level of productivity and income, which is done by addressing the factors that lead to low labor productivity in Iraq, which recorded in 2018 less than half of what they were in the 70s of the last century due to dominance of the unproductive public sector, in addition to decline in the tradable goods sector and the effects. The negative impact of the non-competitive exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar, especially against the exchange rate of the currencies of Iraq's trading partners, on the agriculture and basics industries in Iraq over the past decade. She also adds reports of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the international organizations showed that Iraqi economy began to gradually recover with the beginning of 2021, as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund expected the growth of Iraqi economy as a result of the reform steps that Iraqi government is working on, embodied in the white papers and its contents. That was a mouthful. Shafak News then reports the Central Bank of Iraq revealed Monday a growth in the currency's hard currency reserves to reach more than $64 billion. The deputy governor of the bank, Isham Shamran, told Shafak News Agency Iraq's reserves of hard currency, which includes the cash currency of the dollar, the euro, sterling, and other foreign currencies, in addition to the gold reserves, amounted to more than $64 billion, noting that there is a continuous growth in the reserves are hard currencies. Shamran added that the volume of Iraq's gold reserves is 96 tons, explaining that Iraq began with the rise of the sequence globally, reaching the 38th rank globally by owning the largest gold reserves in the world. On January 19th, the Central Bank of Iraq announced a significant growth in foreign currency reserves last year, thanks to the diversified investment and management in accordance with monetary policy based on international best practice, away from risk. Baghdad Mwanzi News reports on Monday the presidency of the House of Representatives decided to convert the session into a deliberated one. The media department stated in a statement, the presidency of the Parliament decided to convert Monday's session into a deliberated one. It is noteworthy that the House of Representatives announced early Monday the postponement of its session for a half an hour. The Parliament's media department announced that 58 deputies attended the session devoted to electing a president. Monday, the House of Representatives is scheduled to hold the session to elect the President of the Republic, while a number of blocs announced a boycott of the session. So I'm going to sum up what happened. There were two candidates that didn't meet requirements, was Zabari and Al-Habasi. As mentioned earlier, there was a lot of back and forth between nominated candidates. The Parliamentary Information Service says that according to Law Number 8 of 2012, the House of Representatives announced the opening of candidacy for the post of President of the Republic, saying those wishing to run for office who meets the conditions stipulated in Article 1 of the aforementioned law and referred to below must submit their written applications together with the official documents proving that they meet the conditions, along with their CVs that they submitted to the presidency of the House of Representatives and handed over to the legal departments in the House of Representatives, located at the Conference Palace headquarters, starting from the start of the official working day on Wednesday, 9/2/2022, for a period of 3 days. Conditions to be met by the candidates: Iraqi by birth and from Iraqi parents, fully qualified and over 40 years of age. He has a good reputation, political experience, and is known for his integrity, uprightness, justice, and loyalty to the homeland. That his academic achievement is not less than the initial university degree recognized by the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Iraq. Not convicted of a crime involving moral turpitudes, he shall not be covered by the provisions of the accountability and justice law procedures or any procedure that replace them. Requires official documents, written request to presidency of the House of Representatives of the desire to run for the position of presidency of the Republic. Personal documents providing that the person wishing to run is Iraqi by birth and that his parents are Iraqi. So basically, they nominated a couple candidates. Parliament plus federal courts rejected them, and the process started over on Wednesday. Now they have 3 days. Shafak News then reports the leader of the Sadrist movement, Muqtada al-Sadrs, announced on Tuesday his adherence to forming a national majority government. This came in a brief tweet after he met at his residence in Najaf. The commander of the Quds in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Ismail Qiani, al-Sadr said in his tweet, "No Eastern, not Western, a national majority government." This is Qiani's third visit to Iraq since last month in the effort to bridge the gap between the Shiites forces over the formation of the next government. The Sadrist bloc tops the October 10th elections with 73 seats, followed by the Progress Alliance with 37 seats, the State of Law Coalition with 33 seats, and the Kyrgyzstan Democratic Party with 31. Al-Sadr's seeks to form a national majority government by excluding some forces from it, led by the State of Law Coalition, led by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Unlike the rest of the Shiites force within the coordination framework that demand a consensual government in which all political forces and parliament participants, similar to the previous session. Shafak News then reports the United Nations Compensation Authority announced yesterday that Iraq has completed paying $52.4 billion to compensate individuals, companies, and governments for the damage of the 1990 invasion and occupation of Kuwait. Overall, about 2.7 million claims has been filed with the confirmed value of $352.5 billion. But the UN Compensation Commission has agreed to pay $52.4 billion, covering 1.5 million successful claims. The largest claim approved by the UN Compensation Commission was $14.7 billion in damages to the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, the KPC, in which departing Iraqi force set oil wells ablaze. Payments were suspended between October 2014 and April 2018 due to the Iraqi government security and budgetary problems in its fight against Islamic State militants. With the final payment of compensation made on January 13, 2022, all compensation awarded by the Commission has now been paid in full. The Geneva base body said in a statement followed a closed-door meeting of its board of directors. She adds that the government of Iraq has filled its international obligations to compensate all the claimants who were awarded compensation by the committee for the losses and damages that occurred as a direct result of Iraq's illegal invasion of Kuwait. Let's take a look at last week's newsroom comments. Queen Crab says, I absolutely will recommend you to my other Dinar friends. My response is, please everyone continue to do this. This is how this channel of friends and family will continue to grow. I appreciate you. And that's it for this week's Newsroom Weekly Review, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news on reforms and economics. I try to bring you all the latest Dinar news without having to keep up with all the different outlets. I'm Chella Smith, Newsroom here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my content, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget, the full month of February will get you an entry into the Viewers Appreciation Drawing. I'd like to see where everyone's from, city, state, country. I will see you guys next Friday for your next Newsroom International Headlines. Shout out to Currency 365 for his continued support. Thank you everyone for joining me. I hope the audio issues wasn't too bad. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Make sure you join us Fridays, 4 p.m. with Newsroom Updates with Chella Smith Entertainment News.